Hey guys, how's it going? So last year, four major gun control bill packages did pass in Michigan. Now those are going to go into effect in about a month. Some of this is complicated and there's a lot to it. So I'm joining this video with my friend Brendan from Great Lakes Gun Rights. We're going to discuss all these bills, when they go into effect, all the craziness that's going on, and what we could look forward to, or rather, what we're going to need to fight against here in 2024. Keep in mind, the governor of Michigan has just come forth and said, yes, an assault weapons ban is on the table. We're going to talk about that and so much more. Check out the link in the description for Great Lakes Gun Rights. They're a great Second Amendment advocacy group. I strongly recommend joining. I'm a member and I think it's well worth your money to help support this organization. Also, I've spent a lot of time in Lansing and expect to do so again this year. I'm always advocating for our Second Amendment protected rights in Michigan. So if you'd like to support this channel, also check the links down there in the description. And please share this video with everybody you know who's a gun owner or Second Amendment supporter in Michigan, because we all need to get together this year. We cannot let it be as bad as last year. So check out the conversation, and there's tons of information for you guys. Make sure you leave a comment. Any more questions? We are going to do more follow-ups as this year goes on. So last year was literally insane for gun control in Michigan, with the Dems taking over the Senate and the House by 2-seat majorities, very narrow. And they passed, it was 11 bills, but three primary subject matters. We're talking about the mandatory storage, the red flag laws, and the universal licensing, registration, and confiscation scheme. So those passed last year. What are we looking at right now as far as those bills going into effect?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting, Micah. I had I don't know if I'd use the word privilege, but I'll go ahead and use it to attend the State of the State address last January as a guest of State Representative Angela Regas, and of course, Governor Whitmer announced her gun control plan then, and she announced what her agenda was, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, we had the tragic shooting at Michigan State, which of course the Democrats politicized, and they were waiting for it, and they had the bills already in their desk drawer, waiting to pull out to slap on the desk of the speaker's desk to have them introduced and ram them through. Um, you know. The bills that you just lined out there, of course, we know that they had nothing to do with the Michigan State shooting. That didn't matter. They used the Michigan State shooting as their catalyst, as Rahm Emanuel once famously quipped, "Never let a serious crisis go to waste." And this is what Democrats do. I mean, they're doing this on homeschooling right now too. I'm sure you've seen the headlines on that. So they use a tragedy and they use it to justify more government control. So yeah, what we're looking at is a pretty drastic change for Michigan gun owners. We already live in a state that is not that great on guns. I've had the privilege of working in the gun rights movement for almost a decade, and have seen gun rights restored across this country through constitutional carry laws, repealing of gun-free zones. Michigan, we're heading the wrong way, but frankly, we've been stuck in neutral for a long time. I've been saying for years that if Michigan doesn't get rid of the pistol registration scheme, the permit to purchase system, it is going to get expanded to all firearm purchases. Democrats have been telling us that through the bills they've been filing for years, and that's exactly what they did. It was actually about a decade ago that there was a really close effort to repealing the whole darn system outright, but Republicans failed to do it. They did a hodgepodge, kind of make our lives better bill instead of doing a full repeal of pistol registration, the permit to purchase scheme. Well, they didn't get it done, and Democrats use it as a catalyst, or not really a catalyst, but use the infrastructure to now expand to all firearm purchases in Michigan. Now, the way the universal gun licensing scheme, I like how you call it licensing, registration, and confiscation, because that's the whole goal for Democrats, and their allies in the gun ban lobby is to get a record of every firearm that law-abiding gun owners own, because they can't get the criminals, so they can only get the law-abiding who abide by it. Um, and so they expanded the system to to include all firearm purchases, which we already know in Michigan you already have to go through this stupid system for pistol purchases. But now they're expanding it to shotguns and shotguns and rifles.
Yeah.
Um, now they don't have the mail in the form to the government requirement for long guns like they do with the pistols, but it's still added bureaucracy that my guess is there's going to be a lot of people who wake up here in a few weeks when this thing actually becomes law, who may not have been paying attention, who are going to have a hard time realizing the new laws that are now in effect.
You
Uh,
said coming up here soon. We're looking at February 13th, right?
that's right, and we're trying to figure that out. We were just discussing, Micah, how we don't know how these laws are going to be worked out because right now Michigan has a pistol purchase permit system. They're going to have to change some forms. What's that going to look like? How is that logistically going to look? And the increase in the number of background checks that are now going to be run by local law enforcement agencies is going to be drastically increased, putting more stress and more workload on local governments
Yeah.
than there was before. I mean, there's going to be backlogs. We already have issues with Wayne County processing CPLs. What's this going to look like? Well, now people having to get a background check, get a purchase permit to purchase a long gun.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking about, as of right now, when we're recording this video, this is January 4th. This is going to change a month from now. As long as you don't have any reason to believe that your friend, let's just say, is prohibited, you can meet up with him at his house or the parking lot, whatever, and sell them a long gun face to face, just like how you normally exchange property. They're saying this is going to have to go through a licensing scheme, which means they're going to be registering. And the only reason governments have ever kept a registry is because they plan on coming to pick them up eventually.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, and we've seen that the world over. That's just the fact. Um, yeah, so it's going to become even more of a bureaucratic nightmare to purchase firearms legally in Michigan than it was before, even. So there's a hope that maybe under Bruin, there's a reasonable challenge for it because there's other states who have like similar licensing requirements where the license to purchase is good for you know 30 days or several years or several months. In Michigan, it's a very short window of time that it's good.
Yeah.
I believe it's 10 days if I'm remembering correctly.
If
So
it's for
that
pistols right now, yes.
yeah.
So one of the biggest questions I'm going to get, and guys, we're going to come back and do follow-ups. Do you guys remember the whole Obamacare thing where people asked Pelosi about all of it and she said, well, you have to pass the bill before you know what's in the bill? It kind of seems like that here because I've not seen a form yet. I don't think it's been made publicly available if there is one.
Yeah.
And we just don't know exactly how this is going to be implemented. So stay tuned on what's going to magically happen on the 13th of February, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're just gonna have to wait, sit and wait, and hopefully nobody becomes a criminal. I think there are parts of the state where it's not as big of a concern, but there are certain parts of the state where you fully expect prosecutors and law enforcement bureaucrats to use this new law to punish otherwise law-abiding citizens.
And I want to interject one quick thing. We're going to talk about Great Lakes Gun Rights, which is your group, an awesome group, by the way, guys, in just a couple minutes. But people are like, why haven't people sued yet on this? This is just a guess of mine. I'm not an attorney. I don't work for a gun rights group, but we haven't even seen yet how this universal licensing scheme is going to be even put in place. So it's probably hard to get anything going litigation wise till we see how they're even going to implement it, right?
Yeah, and I've talked to several lawyers on this too to get their thoughts on it because there was a hope that under Bruin that there'd be opportunities to file an injunction before the law goes into effect, but there's that whole issue of standing. Someone has to have standing. Someone has to have basically had a threat of injury to themselves or to their property in order for them to be able to file a challenge on the law. And
Okay.
that's just part of the issue right now is you know proving that someone has standing before the law is even taken effect. I mean, you would hope that it'd just be able to get struck down on constitutional grounds, but I mean, we're seeing this play out on the assault weapons bans right now. I mean, the Supreme Court is just dragging its feet
Yeah.
to actually enforce Bruin. And we see California doing more radical nonsense every day to make it as difficult as possible for Californians to carry. Just basically flying the bird at the Supreme Court. And when is SCOTUS actually going to stand up and say that's enough?
Yeah, and Bruin was supposed to be the finally bona fide the Heller decision. Like, look, guys, you actually have to follow Heller now. Now
Yeah,
there's Bruin, and I think in states like Michigan and others, it was just kind of almost a retaliation to the more conservative leaning Supreme Court and Justice Clarence Thomas, who wrote the majority decision there. So yeah, we
yeah,
know what's going on. They're fighting back, is what they're
yeah,
doing. The
yeah.
Democrats in Michigan and Republicans in
Right.
Michigan.
Yep.
So the red flag laws, that's a huge one. That's coming up here February 13th as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And talking to lawyers on this too, Michigan quite potentially has one of the worst red flag laws in the nation now, for a couple different reasons. One of them being it has a very low threshold of evidence i- in order to be used to justify someone taking away someone's legally owned firearms without due process. It also allows for jurisdiction shopping, where basically where you remember during COVID, you had several areas of this state that just said, no, we're not going to follow Governor Whitmer's edicts, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, uh, they did, and we know this is how liberals think because of the political geography of our state. They knew that there was going to be large areas of our state where judges and prosecutors were just going to say, we're not going to enforce this law. Well, now with jurisdiction shopping, I mean, you're basically going to have little red flag factories out of Washtenaw County, probably, or Wayne County, where you have these liberal anti-gun prosecutors who are just going to be used by the Dana Nessels of the world to justify red flag gun confiscation on whomever they want. And you look at the things that can be used against you for these red flag laws. Things that don't even come close to being the commitment of a crime. Whether or not you've purchased a firearm or ammunition in the last 180 days can be used against you. Something that you can legally and lawfully do can be used against you in issuing of a red flag order.
That's crazy. And there's obviously people are worried about tit for tat. Oh, geez, imagine that. Someone's ex wife or ex girlfriend might be mad at them. How could that go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then, from what I understand, any law enforcement officer in the state can flag you as well.
Yeah, essentially that's the big loophole that they had. That they said, well, it's only going to be close family and friends, but then they bring in law enforcement and medical professionals.
Yeah.
So, what kind of HIPAA laws are going to get violated there? And also with law enforcement, yeah, all you have to do is it's call a cop. A cop can then go to a judge, and if the red flag gets filed without your notice.
And it's take the guns first, then due process. I say that in air quotes because that's
Yeah,
no due process at all.
yeah,
You're already flagged. There's already cops coming to take your guns before you even know that this
yeah.
has been alleged against you. You don't get to come with your own attorney to put forth exculpatory evidence.
Yeah.
This is the complete opposite of how the Bill of Rights outlines due process, right?
Well, and because it's a civil matter.
Yeah.
They won't even provide a representation for you.
No court
Um,
appointed attorney. It's a civil matter, but here's the crazy part. But then it becomes criminal if you violate the order
yeah,
after it gets put on you, right?
yeah, and they can do it ex parte if they have the concern that that you could be a danger to your, or that you might be a problem with willingly going along with the order. So, um, yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, that you could be a threat to yourself or others. So I guess, guys,
Yeah,
that your First Amendment's going to get affected now because
yeah,
God forbid you get online and say you're sad right now or you're a little ticked off today. That could all be
yeah.
used against you in theory,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and on that point, the law says intentionally or unintentionally a danger to yourself or others.
I do remember that. So
Yeah.
if there's going to be an ice storm tomorrow, you could unintentionally slip on the ice. So hypothetically, that could be grounds for it.
Yeah. Why not?
Okay. The other one that passed, it's going to become law, guys, February 13th, yet again. We're looking at this mandatory storage within guns within your home, if you go to your friend's house, things like that. What's up with this storage, mandatory storage?
Yeah, so this is one where where it seemed like they tried to be cute by half with trying to say that they were not trying to violate somebody's Second Amendment rights, um, by somehow magically following the Heller decision because storage laws have been struck down before. Um, the penalties only come in after something happens with a firearm that was not properly stored. Um, but really, what happens with these laws, though, is that it's a one size fits all, and it's going to bind the consciences of good law abiding people who are currently perfectly safely storing their firearms in their homes. If they have children or they have grandchildren coming over, um, stuff like that. But now, because the law says that it has to be under lock and key, no, now it has to be behind lock and key. And the issue with that being is, um, you're basically disarming yourself in your own home. There are many different safe ways to store a firearm that don't require a lockbox or a safe. Um, Yet now, and the geniuses in Lansing have decided, well, everyone needs to get a lock box or a safe. And let's be serious. The places where this is actually going to be an issue, where these tragedies happen, this law is not going to be followed. And I advocate for safe storage. I think that all gun owners, responsible gun owners, advocate for safe storage, but that looks differently for different homes.
Yes.
And of course, the standard too is like it says. The law basically implies that if your home could be potentially have minors in it, well, define potential. So if you're a grandparent and
Hmm.
you have a grandchild that comes by for a couple hours and you don't have a safe, um, yeah, of course you should be storing it safely. But does that mean that that person is going to have to go fork out hundreds of dollars for a safe, even though they have things safely stored as is?
Yeah. So there was a at first, because again, a lot of these bills changed rapidly, and unfortunately, the Democrats made deals with Republicans who did come over and vote with the Dems on the safe storage. And I think they changed it at a certain point. It was going to be where just if the police were in your home for some other reason and saw the firearm not locked up. Now I think I heard you correctly. The final law that's going to take effect, there actually has to be some type of, is it damage or does someone have to get hurt? Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, exactly. There has to be some kind of incident that has to happen. So, and the problem is that some of the way that it works with some of the other um, laws, and I'd have to think this through with regarding the universal gun licensing and registration scheme. There's some way that there was a gun rights activist who I was talking to. Basically, the implications that this also has on youth hunting,
Mhm.
and how can someone under the age of 18 who can lawfully hunt on their parents' property, um, can they actually now can they still do that alone, or do they have to have someone with them the entire time? So that's actually another outwork, and I think that's actually part of the or excuse me, the mandatory storage bill,
Yeah.
um, that now is going to have basically an impact on youth hunting. Which it's not surprising. There was a survey done last year by some news outlet that showed that I think there's only one Democrat in all of Lansing that hunts, and of course, he voted for all the gun control. But these people have no knowledge of firearms. They have
Yeah.
no knowledge, and frankly, there's a lot of Republicans who don't either, who don't even own firearms, who have no knowledge of how firearms even work, um, and it shows what the laws that they pass.
And they have no knowledge of the Michigan or United States Constitution, and that's showing a lot too lately.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's a little bit more, but before we get to the next stuff that's coming into place, because there's more, guys, so don't go away. Talk to us real quick about Great Lakes gun rights and what you've been doing in Michigan and what you're going to be doing next year,
yeah,
this
sure.
year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Great Lakes Gun Rights is a state affiliate of the National Association for Gun Rights. We've been operating in Michigan since 2015. We consider ourselves to be Michigan's no compromise gun rights lobby. We take an approach to politics where we say that we expect politicians to vote for your gun rights 100% of the time, or they can go find a new job. We expect them to respect our rights. We respect them. We expect them to support laws like constitutional carry, the repeal of firearm registration, to repeal red flag, because these are these are rights that are given to us by our Creator and are protected by our Constitution. And if you're going to vote against them, doesn't matter your party stripe, you should be replaced. Um, and and be held accountable for your voting records. So, what that means is that we aim to get as many gun owners and other like-minded individuals activated across the state,
Hmm.
to ultimately be the voice in the ear of their politicians. During 2023, during the fights back in the spring, winter, we were sending out tens of thousands of pieces of mail. We were sending out tens of thousands of text messages, emails, um, social media posts, phone calls, directly calling gun owners and patching them into the offices of their lawmakers. We delivered over 90,000 petitions that gun owners had signed over the years to their lawmakers, and all of those are with the intention to show elected officials the potential cost if they vote against the Second Amendment. And that's how politics is done. You have to show demonstrable evidence of angry constituents to get your point across. Now, ultimately, Democrats did what they did, but now they have to weigh that risk when we get an opportunity to then talk to those same people again, which we will in 2024, and remind their constituents how they voted on the Second Amendment when it mattered most.
And I'll say this real quick. They could have done a lot more, guys. That doesn't mean that this was okay. It doesn't mean that Brendan or I compromised. No, we want zero gun control laws. They all need repealed. But it could have been a lot worse. There were like 100 other bills that they had put forth that if it
Yeah.
wasn't for all this pressure, our list might be twice as long.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Micah, is that you have to fight for every single inch. I heard several times that, from folks who are saying, "Well, why do you even bother? They're just going to do it." Well, first of all, they haven't done it until they took the votes,
Yeah.
and I was expecting them to basically ram it through the week after the shooting. Yet it took them 2 months to get it all done. And I believe that's a testament to the amount of pressure that gun owners put on the Democrat majorities. I know that there are several Democrats who are in swing districts who are sweating these votes and are now telling their leadership they don't want anything to do with any more gun votes. They're done. And if we didn't do that, if we didn't put pressure on them during this fight, they're just going to assume that people are okay with this, that they're okay with the gun control that passed, and heck, we may as well dabble with some more. Why not pass an assault weapons ban?
Yeah. We're going to talk about some future outlooks in just a second here, but I will tell you guys this real quick, and then we're going to move on to more craziness that's going to take effect soon. I went to Lansing a lot last year. You guys know who have been following my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Go back and watch my Library of Michigan videos. I went to the Capitol a ton of times, and almost every time I was there, you happened to be there. And there weren't really a lot of us there, unfortunately. But I remember one time I was talking to you, and I think you had to rent like a truck, if I'm not mistaken, because you had so many petitions, you couldn't like carry them in like your car or whatever. And I saw you and a colleague of yours were going around with one of those big wagons to reps offices, and you guys were pulling out stacks that were not just inches but feet high of petitions from all of your members. And then I would go around to these different representatives' offices and senators, and like you'd be talking to them and gun control would come up, and that's why I was there, and they'd say, yeah, look at this, and they'd turn around and on their windowsill would be this big stack of Great Lakes gun rights petitions. So I think Great Lakes Gun Rights is an excellent group for you guys to support. The link is down in the description of this video, because literally Brendan himself, as well as his colleagues, helpers, whatever, have physically been there. They are literally handing, in addition to all this digital stuff, they're handing stacks of petitions. And these representatives literally have acknowledged them and told me about these stacks of petitions when I go in their offices. So if you guys can't go to Lansing once a week or every day, you guys need to make time to go there. Throwing a little contribution to Great Lakes Gun Rights, they can be there when maybe you have to be at work,
Oh, appreciate that, Micah.
Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate you being there so much. There was so many times, man, when it was like literally just a sea of anti-gunners, college kids advocating for gun control, and then like I'd find you, and we were like the only two people there. So
Yeah.
that's meant a lot to me, you know.
Yeah, it's you, me, and Tom Lambert were who were
Yes,
quite often, it's yeah, it was a lonely world there. Of course, they weren't letting us testify, which was par for the course for them, but that's okay.
Tom Lambert, Michigan Open Carry, another great group.
Yep, absolutely.
What about this domestic violence that I was showing my viewers literally passed in the middle of the night, like
Yep.
2 a.m., 3 a.m., all that craziness? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so this is a bill that myself and Tom Lambert of Michigan Open Carry had been ringing the gong about for weeks leading up to when they were working to pass it. We were saying that this is going to lead to nonviolent offenders, nonviolent people who have nonviolent misdemeanors who currently have their right to carry or right to possess. They're going to lose their gun rights. And we're told that we're hyperventilating, we're not telling the full truth. You have to look at the law, blah 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 blah. Well, then the Democrats were quite honest about it in committee. Media was silent, was completely silent about it. They just reported, oh, they're doing this good stuff to disarm domestic offenders. And then a week after the governor signs the bill, comes an article from Detroit News detailing all these new nonviolent misdemeanors who will now be losing their gun rights under this new law. And some of them might be retroactive. In other words, these are people who currently have the right to carry, who have a nonviolent misdemeanor on their record, who now may lose their gun rights after the fact, which is questionable on constitutional grounds, of course. Um, but that the most frustrating thing. This happens so many times with the media, and I'm going to go off a little bit here, if you don't mind, about the media. This happened during the committee hearings earlier this year when you saw the committee hearings where it was like 20 to 1, 30 to 1, anti-gun to pro-gun. Our time was limited. We weren't allowed to testify. The media, I remember someone from the Detroit News. I'm not going to mention his name because he really enjoys when people talks about him and
I know
really
who he is.
yeah, it really inflates his ego. Um, he made a comment. Well, it looks like the committee hearings are balanced to me, and everything seems fine. It seems to be equal time. I called him out for it. Whatever. Literally a week later, he's complaining about getting locked out of committee hearings. Um, and then, after this DV bill passes, media silence about the potentiality of nonviolent, people losing their gun rights. And then they do this. I mean, the article is great. It was behind a paywall, but I was able to get a copy of it still. Of all these offenses now that you're dealing with things like campaign finance law violations that could or lobbying violations that could lead to you losing your gun rights. Things that are nonviolent in nature that currently cannot cause you to lose your gun rights under this new law. The Detroit News just all of a sudden realized, oh, well, look, there's a good story here. We'll cover this after the governor's already signed it.
Yeah, and I noticed there was, I mean, I reported on it. I did a video talking about, unsolicited commercial phone call after 9 p.m. to certain people, entering the wrong person's ice fishing shanty. I mean, all kinds of just craziness that people are like, well, dude, we need to keep a guy that regularly beats his wife from owning a gun. And that's what they tried to portray it as
Yeah,
until you realize like there's all this stuff that some of it isn't even really a crime necessarily. In
yeah,
other cases, it might be like a white collar type minor
yeah,
crime. And
yeah,
they want to lump that in with the same people that do beat their wife every night after work?
yeah, exactly. Yep, yep.
So again, we're going to have to see, unfortunately, guys, and we'll have follow ups, but you have to pass the bill to see what's in it because nobody likes to shed any light on anything except for people like me and Great Lakes Gun Rights and Michigan Open Carry and maybe 2 or 3 other people total in this whole state. So we have to see what's going to happen with it. But it's a huge can of worms they've opened up where so many, quote, law abiding citizens can find themselves as a prohibited person real quick in Michigan coming up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so real quick, let's go on to this year. I said next year accidentally. It is this year now,
Yeah.
2024. Um, we know they said last year they passed all of it that they did. They wanted to do a lot more, but we did fight back the best we could. And they said this is just the start. I remember telling my viewers that a bunch of times.
Yep.
Now this year, right on New Year's, I think it was Fox 2 Detroit. If you guys want to look it up, again, these guys all put their stuff behind paywalls, but you
Yeah.
might be able to find it still. She was with this, in my opinion, very left leaning journalist who was portraying it in a certain way. And he was talking to her about an assault weapons ban in Michigan. Did you see anything to do with that interview?
Yeah, I saw some of it. I didn't get a chance to watch the interview, but I mean, she's been hedging herself on this issue for years. Early in 2023, she said, "Well, I don't know if we'll do that because I'm concerned about interstate commerce. Like she's some kind of a constitutional genius, and she's not going to do an assault weapons ban because of the interstate commerce clause. Like, but her true colors showed because she's got to be waiting in the wings in case Biden can't run for president. So she's got to now come out and say that she would support an assault weapons ban if the legislature decided to pass it. You know, yeah, she's long supported it though.
Yeah.
When she was running for governor, she supported back in 2018. So this is nothing new. Thankfully, right now, with two Democrat vacancies out of the Detroit area, the Democrats don't have the majority in the House. It's 54-54,
Mm-hmm.
20-18 in the Senate, so they don't have the votes for an assault weapons ban today.
No.
Um, I feel pretty confident saying there won't be any Republicans that vote for it, and Democrats. I think that there's several who don't have an appetite for any more gun control right now. That can change, of course. Um, those special elections for those seats are coming in April. They are Democrat leaning seats, so they're likely to be won by the Republican, or excuse me, likely to be won by the Democrat. But we're going to be taking a close look at those races, and we'll be informing our members in those districts where their candidates stand on the gun rights issue, if we believe it makes sense. Um, so we basically have a 4 month hiatus here of hopefully nothing dumb happens, but crazy things can happen, and we'll stay vigilant because there's a pile of other bills. They still have the bill dealing with polling place bans, um, ballot drop box, gun free zones,
Yep.
2 week waiting period. We've got a bill dealing with regulating BB guns. Um, completely gutting the rights of concealed pistol license holders in Michigan. Um, a lot of these bills are stuck right now because they can't go anywhere in the House. Um, but the Senate can, obviously pass some things in the meantime. But the other wild card is the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, the federal Sixth Circuit, striking down some legislative maps over in the Detroit area, 13 districts between the state house and state senate, where the Sixth Circuit has said that these are unconstitutional maps because they were racially gerrymandered to benefit Democrats, of course. So that throws a whole curveball into the mix too, because now the independent redistricting commission is now going to have to go redraw maps in the process, which kind of throws a whole nother layer of chaos into it. So
Yeah.
you could have essentially, a dozen or more, probably upwards of 20 some state house and senate districts potentially getting redrawn. The house is already up this year, but you have a few of these senate districts that could be up as well, and that could throw the partisan balance off entirely.
Yeah.
Uh, so you also
So
go ahead.
I would say so. This next year is going to be crazy. I just want to
Yeah,
back up real quick here. We're trying to be optimistic, guys, because look, it's a fine line. If you're too doom and gloom, everyone puts their head in the sand, says, let's
yeah,
just give up. But I want to remind you guys, it can get a lot worse. So
yeah,
we need to stay positive here. Still remain very, very vigilant with your reps, though, and senators, because we have seen Republicans vote for gun control before on multiple bills this past year that are now
Yep.
laws. And I think an assault weapons ban is on the table, guys. I'm not saying it's going to pass, but do not dismiss it. I think there's a chance we could get an assault weapons ban in Michigan next year if things line up the way they want them to, and if all of the gun owners and Second Amendment advocates fall asleep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We saw Democrats pass three major gun control bills, 56, 54, well, 56, 51. There were several Republicans absent, and then 2018 in the Senate. They did a lot of arm twisting to get those bills passed. And if the governor really wanted it, there'd be a lot of arm twisting to get it done as well. God forbid there's some kind of a tragedy that they use to justify it. Of course, there was the awful shooting in Maine. Um, back in November. That something like that happens here, which we live in a fallen world. These things happen. And guess what? Now we live in a state that even makes it more difficult for people to arm themselves. We have, uh, you know, the lowest numbers of law enforcement in recent memory because just of how hard that profession is right now.
Yeah.
They can't hire cops. They can't hire good cops. They can't keep them hired. And then you have some departments that are just doing, completely, defund the police and all this nonsense. So, we're having to be our own best self-defense right now. Um, and of course, Democrats are making it as difficult as possible, all while um, we're releasing criminals on the streets. So,
Yep, there you go. Just like the person that committed the tragedy at Michigan State, that person wasn't prosecuted fully and sentenced fully for prior offenses as well. So there you go. Yeah. So we've covered a lot of stuff here. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you're looking for the upcoming year that we should keep an eye on?
yeah, I mean, obviously, we live in a swing state, and keep in mind that 2022 was a very bad year for Republicans in Michigan, and I only say about this about Republicans because Republicans generally don't do really stupid things on guns. We have the ability as gun owners to hold them to it. Now they will do dumb things. We've seen that here in Michigan, and then I think back in 2018 in Florida when there was a rhino stampede to pass gun control down there. So don't misunderstand me here. I don't trust Republicans. I trust Republicans less than Democrats because I know where Democrats are going to stand most of the time. Republicans, too many of them waffle far too much. But there is a possibility because of these new maps getting drawn for these districts around Detroit, um, and just the political winds of the state that and based on what the Democrats did on guns and other issues, that the Democrats could find themselves out of political control this fall. But that's not going to happen if people sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on the sideline thinking, though, my vote doesn't matter or the election's stolen, well, guess what? You just let our enemies win. That's exactly what they want you to think. They want you to think that your vote doesn't matter and that you may as well stay home. And there's no point to call your politicians about these issues. They don't listen anyways. Look, politicians are creatures that can be understood, and they can be understood because they have this desire to be reelected, and we have that over them. We have the ability to control their political destiny by saying, yeah, you vote for all this stuff, you're going to be out of a job. But we have to make sure that there's follow through on that. Otherwise, they're just going to, see that we're firing blanks. So we have to hold them accountable for what they've done to our rights.
Yes, and I will give you guys a little bit of encouragement. Trust me on this. There's days and weeks and many times months that'll go on before your state rep or senator has anyone cross through those doors of their office that's not a lobbyist. Like if you actually take the time to go to Lansing, walk in your state representative's office or your senator's office, if you want to talk to them personally, you should get a hold of their staff and set up an appointment. I'm sure almost everybody in the House and Senate will have an appointment with a constituent if you schedule it, right? But that means like you might be the only person that's not a lobbyist that's walked in that office in days, weeks, or probably even months. You might hold a little more power than you think by actually going
Yeah.
up there sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even if you just send an email or make a phone call or send a
Yes.
letter or send a postcard, personal visits, there's so many different ways. Or if they're having a coffee in your district, in your
Yeah.
neighborhood, go to it. Tell them where you stand on these things, because ultimately they get down to counting votes. How many
Yep.
people can I tick off before it could cost me my election? That's a game that they play. Uh, um,
Yep.
so be that voice, and if they get 5 angry phone calls from someone on an issue out of the blue, they're gonna think that, oh well, 5 people, there's got to be hundreds who are upset about this because people don't call.
Oh yeah, five's enough actually. So do all that. You guys need to do that. The calling, the writing, the coffee hours. Maybe make it a goal to go to the Capitol once this year, right? That type of thing. And then also groups like Great Lakes Gun Rights. They are going to be constantly pressuring them digitally, social media, going into their offices, dropping off stacks of petitions, all those types of things. I think it's what, like, starting at $30 or more, but for $30 you can get in on a annual membership and help do all the stuff that you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So check that link down in the description, guys. I'm a supporter of Great Lakes Gun Rights, and like I said, there's many good groups out there, national level, even in Michigan. But I have seen this man here and his group in Lansing just as much, if not more than any of them. Like you in Michigan Open Carry is the main ones that I've seen in Lansing. So I strongly urge you guys to support Great Lakes Gun Rights because we cannot take this next year for granted. I think they will try to pass an assault weapons ban, or maybe even more than that if we just fall asleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool, man. Thanks. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, Micah.
All right, see you later. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. We tried to cover a lot, talk about things. It was a rough year last year. Hopefully this year will be just a little bit better. And let me know what you guys are doing to help support the Second Amendment in Michigan. I always enjoy reading all the comments, and make sure you check out the links in the description if you want us to help support this channel. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one.